Hello comic fans, here's my third installment of overviews with European comic series. I've started with Wild Western stories, continued with crime and espionage books, and now it's time for science fiction. Arguably the genre in which European comics shine the most. Therefore, I will do this as a two-parter. This video will cover the ranks from 20 up to 11, and the next overview will be the top 10 proper. Starting with some honorable mentions, Moonface, drawn by François Buc and written by Alexandru Jodorowsky, should actually be in my list. I've left it still out for two reasons. One, it's actually more esoteric fantasy than sci-fi. And two, Jodorowsky will be on my list, as you may have guessed anyway, despite of him being an Argentinian and all, but he's obviously very important as a writer for European artists. And there are some other books I should show and discuss in other videos like Morea, Dani Futuro or Yokotsuno, even though, especially in regard of the two latter ones, I'm really not the target audience, since these comics are aimed for the most part at kids, I think. But now to my very grown-up list of sci-fi comic series from Europe. On rank 20, Prophet or the Book of Chaos, a series about some ancient evil coming down to earth from the mountains. It's rather an horror story than science fiction, so if I would do a separate list with horror titles, this would be in it. But since I don't do such a separate list, and since this comic takes us into a post-apocalyptic world in the future, I simply file it under sci-fi. Look at these covers. Mathieu Lefray's inside art is okay and sometimes even pretty solid, but his cover art belongs to the most beautiful pieces I know of. Rank 19 is a classic European sci-fi series. Luc Orient, drawn by Eddie Pape and written by Michel Renier, aka Greg, who wrote Andy Morgan / Bernard Prince and Comanche for Herman, Bruno Brazil for William Vance, and a ton of other stories for different artists. Luc Orient is often advertised as the European Flash Gordon, which describes some similarities in terms of the naivety and the general setup, but Eddie Pape's almost harsh and sometimes even bizarre art is clearly distinct from the elegance of Alex Raymond's style. On 18, we have the Trigan Empire, or just in short, Trigan, Don Lawrence's epos about an empire on the faraway planet called Electon, which he modeled after ancient Rome and the ancient Greek, but with the ability to build modern planes and rockets. It's an hierarchic society with noble ruling men, serving servants, and evil-looking villains. To say that the premise of that series is outdated would be a severe understatement. But for me, it adds up to the fun whenever I want some pulp trash. And the wonderful art of Don Lawrence makes even the predictable and stereotypical plots very enjoyable. On rank 17 there are two series drawn by Paul Gillan, Die Überlebende in German, and maybe the English translation would be The Survivor, and The Castaways of Time, Die Schiffbrüchigen der Zeit. They are for the most part written by Paul Gillan as well. That said, Castaways of Time was initially co-written by Jean-Claude Forest, the creator of Barbarella. So it's no surprise that these comics share the dreamlike surrealism and the nice 60s sexiness of Barbarella. Nevertheless, Paul Gillan's storytelling is certainly too long-winded and wordy for our modern sensibilities. But in my opinion, his art, and especially creatures like the tapir, for instance, make more than just up for the lack of poignant storytelling. Carthago, or Cathag, on rank 16, is a series that is so successful that it already has its own spin-offs, the so-called Carthago Adventures, which I haven't read yet. Some years from now, giant animals are discovered in formerly unexplored spaces in the deep sea, especially the megalodon, an oversized shark. So we can witness conflicts between marine scientists, a petrol corporation, a crazy billionaire who collects rare creatures and whatnot. The general premise is, of course, not very plausible. It's very unlikely that these creatures could have survived, especially since big animals need big hunting and mating grounds, and so on. But if you can put these questions aside, it's an interesting read, told through serviceable art and keeps you entertained. Number 15, Vlad, is maybe the least known title of my list here. These books are out of print, even in Germany, but you can get them for very cheap second-hand. In fact, that's the way I got them. Vlad is a polit-thriller set in a not too far away future, maybe some decades from now, and takes place for the most part in the cities and wastelands of Eastern Europe between the Ukraine and Siberia. The main protagonist, Vlad, is an ex-soldier who has to find his brother, who he needs to claim their mother's heritage. But this is just the start to a long action-packed paper chase through these future wastelands of Eastern Europe and the urban canyons of Moscow and Kiev. It's a dark and pretty adult tale written by Yves Swalfs, the creator of Durango. He's obviously very good in combining well-known tropes into something new, at least new enough to keep you excited and entertained and on the hook. The same is true for the artist Gung-Ho, whose drawings borrow from a lot of sources, but only the best, in particular and especially Enki Bilal and Möbius. On 14 there is Fourth Power, drawn by Juan Giménez. And yes, I know he's from Argentina, but he lives and works in Spain. Therefore, I include him in my list right here, like I'll do it with Jodorowsky. So, the Fourth Power takes us out into space, into war scenarios with high-tech spaceships, tanks and exciting action drawn in the unique, brilliant style of Giménez. The main character is a woman whose brain is actually a blend of the brains of 4 different women with super mental powers. And that's actually not the kind of character description that usually would hold too much appeal for me. But in combination with these fantastic fluid painted depictions of far-out future worlds, I'm all in. Rank 13 share 2 series. One of them, well, is Druna. I've already did a video about it in which I tried to find some pages without too much nudity, so if you want to check that out, you're welcome. Otherwise, my short review: very wordy, almost autistic storytelling, but great art, and this sinister post-apocalyptic world is frighteningly convincing. Same is true for Hombre, which shows us a very similar post-apocalyptic world in which mankind devolves back to some kind of second Stone Age. Drawn and written by the Spaniards José Ortiz Moya and Antonio Sicura Cervera, however they are pronounced, it carries a lot of Cold War and atomic age angst, which sounds frighteningly timely today. With rank 12, Gung-Ho, we have another post-apocalyptic tale of the darker vein, and it's a German comic series, yay! It will be concluded in 2 years with volume 5. So they take their time for sure, but it has been worth it so far. Gung-Ho is about 2 unlike brothers who live in this wild westernish settlement, Fort Apache. Thomas von Kummern's art is in a way fascinating, even though I'm a bit on the fence about it. Multi-layered computer-generated designs add up to panels that resemble cells from animation movies. Sometimes very intriguing and colorful, sometimes strangely stiff in their rendered perfection. Old-fashioned me prefers any kind of line drawing on paper over anything else anyhow. So it's usually pretty impossible to wow me with computer-generated art. But Gung-Ho achieved that, at least almost, in parts. Story-wise, I really look forward to the conclusion in, as I said it, 2 years. Comic fans have to be patient over here. Rank 11 and last series for today is Judge Dredd. Even though the term series is obviously a big understatement for a character and a setting which is basically the fundament and all 4 cornerstones of the 2000 AD universe. Created by John Wagner and Pat Mills and written by a zillion other talented writers, drawn by Carlos Esquerra, Brian Bolland and a zillion other artists, it's just a very fascinating and consistent future world we can experience in these comics. So, I hope it's clear that the bar is already pretty high for the upcoming second installment of my favorite European science fiction comic series. Thanks for listening and watching. Goodbye.